It's the Week 9 edition of the Phil Steele Show. We are live on the Varsity channel on YouTube, and we are brought to you by our friends at Home Field Apparel. If you're watching, go ahead, jump in the chat. We want to hear some picks. Tell us if you agree, disagree. We're going to roll through the next hour or so, hit 25, 30 games. I don't know. I think I put like 70 on there this week because there's so many intriguing lines out there. People are trying to kind of poo-poo on this weekend because no marquee matchups. There are a couple of marquee matchups, but it's a great gambling weekend. And guess what? Don't be complaining about that stuff because 5 weeks from now, we're not going to have a regular season slate to talk about. So we got to take advantage of each and every one as we come down the stretch here. Phil, 2-1 or better on your top three for the last month or so. How you feeling as we head into week 9?
Good. And it's amazing you have that many games on the sheet because there's only 52 games this week overall. So we're going to cover the majority of the board, I would say.
We sure are. A couple of things, a little housekeeping to take care of right off the bat. Unfortunately for me, my crystal ball was correct again on Florida State. 18-point favorite, and they're on the wrong end again of an outright upset on the farm at Stanford. Now, not exactly how I called it because Ben Goldbrinson, I told everybody he was going to have the game of his life. Unfortunately for him, he got hurt in the first quarter. Stanford did it anyways with their backup quarterback. So, Phil, I didn't want to start the show this way, but I felt it in my bones last week that Florida State was just going to lose outright, and they did. Again, the game was way more low scoring than I thought, though. I thought somehow Florida State can rack up 500 yards of total offense and only score 10 points or whatever it was. But anyways, Florida State with a loss. Don't know where we're heading in Tallahassee right now. Thankfully, we don't have to talk about them anymore. They're on a bye this week, so this is probably the last time I mention them in the show today. But one other thing to address, David Kahn, congratulations. You have the rarest of all the jewels, and that's victory over Trip Hurd. The Arkansas A&M game went over by 1 million. I blame Roddy Jones. I told Roddy on Tuesday, I can't believe you told me A&M's defense was so great. They were going to be better than last year. And he was like, yeah, but I didn't tell you to take the under. It's Arkansas. So, I told David as soon as I got off on Saturday, I walked over to his studio. I was like, yeah, you're good. It's only first quarter, but this is a basketball game. Congratulations, David. I do have a shirt in the mail. It actually happens to be the very shirt that David's wearing right now.
Yes, so Trip will be wearing this next week, hopefully, whenever it arrives from our friends at Home Field Apparel. Trip, yeah, that was a bad bet by you, man. I'm sorry. It was the Arkansas is a pure over team. If you listen to Phil every week, Phil tells us Arkansas is a pure over team. And A&M, I mean, Arkansas not stopping A&M. Arkansas not stopping anybody the rest of the year. So Arkansas got theirs. A&M got theirs. A&M won the game by 87 points or something in that game. It was crazy. Phil, I mean, I thought glad I won the bet over Trip, but just your thoughts on that game because, like you said, A&M's defense against Arkansas.
Well, I think a lot of teams are going to struggle against Arkansas's offense, and I still think A&M has one of the better defenses in college football. On the season, they're holding foes to 100 yards per game below their average. That's top 20. And you remember Arkansas at the end of the game, I think they went on a 90-yard drive and scored in the final seconds. So prior to that, it was 33 points, which wouldn't look as bad. And Notre Dame, their other road game that they had, they gave up 40 points in that game. Those are two pretty potent offenses. But overall, I still think A&M has a top 20 defense.
Trip, I can't wait to see you wear the olive and blue. That's all I got to say.
It's a good-looking shirt. I'm not going to mind it that bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, David, you want to take us away to what we've got some Thursday night action, right?
Liz, we of course we got Thursday night action. Come on now. We got South Alabama and Georgia State tonight, 7:30 kickoff in Atlanta. Season on the line for both of these teams, Phil, at 1-6. Loser will not go to the postseason. South Alabama coming off 10 days of rest. Meanwhile, Georgia State, half that. They played last Saturday. South Alabama's favored on the road by 6.5. What do you got here, Phil?
Can we say winner will not go to a bowl game this year as well?
Well, probably. Yeah, I think you're right there, too.
But yeah, it's when I look at the two teams, they're both 1-6. I've been more impressed with South Alabama. They've had some games where, like Coastal Carolina, they had a 420 to 294 yard edge. They had a couple of blown leads in some games. Georgia State did play a tough schedule early. I mean, Ole Miss, Memphis, Vanderbilt, James Madison. But last week against Georgia Southern, they were even in the game. I think they led 24-21 and then ended up losing 41-24. So they've shown some signs of life at times. I think South Alabama's a better team. Can I trust them laying 6.5 on the road? I can't. I'm going to leave it to you guys. This game is all yours. One of you two step up and pick this game.
I will gladly step up and pick this game. All right. I'm ready to pick this one. South Alabama will cover the 6.5 on the road tonight at Georgia State. And here's why. Georgia State is tied for the worst spread covering team in the country, Phil. They're 1-6 against the spread. Give me the Jags. Come on.
All right. There we go. Okay. David, strong pick.
Yeah, I'm telling you, before the show, he was just out here dropping picks left and right. Feeling it this week. I am too. I've got a few picks of my own. Let's go to Friday night. Classic ACC rivalry. Two schools practically neighbors, Cal and Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
Seriously, if we can change one thing about college football, can we just have normal conferences again where you got 10, 12 teams that are all regionally located? I don't know if the bosses at Disney can do something about that. That would be great. Concerning this game, is Cal really as good as their record indicates? They're 5-2 overall. Every week that passes, though, I feel like all their wins and those two losses kind of look worse each week that goes by outside of that Minnesota game. But they're still alive in the ACC race, technically only one conference loss. They can get bowl eligible this week with a win. I don't know if that matters anymore because it might be the Pop-Tart Bowl and you might have half your roster playing. But anyways, Virginia Tech here at home. We like the Hokies at home. We've played the Hokies couple times in life. We came up short, lost by the hook last week at Georgia Tech. But you mentioned after that Wake game a couple weeks back, Phil, that they had not quit under Montgomery. And I think we were on the right side of it last week in the Georgia Tech game where we lost by that hook. You're going to have to pick this one, Phil, because they are laying 4.5. I wish it was more like a field goal, but they're laying 4.5 at home.
Yeah, they really should probably be like a 1.5 point favorite because I think you think Cal's the slightly better team on the road. Give the 3-point home edge, make it 1.5. They're equating for the advantage that Virginia Tech has in the fact that Cal played late Saturday night or played late last week, I should say, and Virginia Tech had the week off, and now Cal has to travel across the country. But it is Friday night. It's Enter Sandman, which you remember that's dynamic when they get a Thursday night game there. As you mentioned, the Georgia Tech game had Philip Montgomery not gone for 2 at the end of the game, just kick the field goal, make it a 14-point game. We got a nice cover with Virginia Tech. They upset NC State on the road, so they're still playing well. And the thing about Sangapolitelli, who a lot of folks call JKS because those are his initials, he has 10 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. I think it'll be a lower scoring game. That'll be a good play in this game because Virginia Tech's offense is not super potent. And I think the hyped atmosphere of a Friday night will be good. But I also lean with Virginia Tech minus the points. But you hit it right on the head, Trip. If we were minus 1.5, it'd be one of my top plays of the week. But laying 5 like they are, that's now you're getting into some different territory. But I still like Tech, and I like the under in this game.
All right, let's head to Saturday, Phil. Big noon kickoff is a massive
Big 12-15 kickoff.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right. That's correct. Never forget, Big 12-15 kickoff. UCLA a part of this year. Who would have thought that little old UCLA would be the big game of the day and the noon slate? They go to Bloomington to face number 2 Indiana. Both teams coming in hot. Indiana perfect and on undefeated regular season watch. UCLA has won 3 straight. They've completely turned their season around. You got a great quarterback battle, Nico Iamaleava, Fernando Mendoza, but this will far and away be the toughest defense that UCLA has faced all year. Indiana's only allowing just over 11 points per game, and they've won 13 in a row at home. It's a lofty spread, Phil, 25.5. The Hoosiers covering that, or are the Bruins going to keep it close?
Yeah, and for the record, I put my 12 TVs on. Why are these pregame shows running until 12:10, 12:15 get the game started. Start the games at noon so they can be finished by 3:30 when the next round of games come in. Then I'm not trying to move my TVs around and say this game's still going, but I want to get this game on, and they're putting it on a different station. Let's just start the damn games at 12 o'clock noon if you could, but I digress. Let's get to this game. The amazing stat here is if you look at the team's mutual score against Michigan State, both teams beat Michigan State 38-13. So you might say to yourself, how is UCLA a 25-point favorite? Well, naturally, Cignetti, one of the best home favorite coaches out there. In fact, if there's a coach that'll score late to cover a game, like Cignetti did last week, I should say, gets a field goal with like 4 minutes to go, we basically win. I mean, they're not going to allow anything. Cignetti has that team play all 60 minutes. And then what happens? Michigan State kicks a field goal with 33 seconds left. Now, why kick a field goal when you're down 25 with 33 seconds to go? But it got them the backdoor cover and an Indiana loss. I had Indiana on my Phil Steele plus tour. I'm a little bitter about that. But I can make a case for Indiana as a big home favorite. I can make a case for UCLA. They've been playing so much better since Tim Skipper took over. Neuheisel took over to play calling. They're 3-0 straight up, 3-0 ATS with a couple of upsets. So I'm going to let one of you guys pick this one because I'm sort of torn. I can't go against Cignetti at home. How do you go against UCLA? Who's got this one?
I'm torn as well. I have a pick here, and the only thing that scares me from an Indiana perspective to not cover the spread, Phil, is they're 4-3 ATS this year, and this is a huge spread for a UCLA team that is just playing with nothing to lose right now. Their hair's on fire. They're firing on all cylinders. So I'm going to lean UCLA plus the 25 and a hook.
There you go.
How about the chat here? We've got Jesse jumping in. He must be a College Sports Now follower. Says, let's go UCLA, the Fighting Wayne Cooks. That's
we love Wayne.
I was just going to say Wayne Cook was all over UCLA when I did the podcast. And if you haven't already listened to the podcast, check that out with Wayne Cook and Stephen Hartzell each and every week right here on the Learfield channel. But Wayne is super happy with his UCLA team. He was so depressed after Northwestern, and now you can barely contain Wayne on the podcast.
You can't. I listened to it this morning on my drive in, Phil. Excellent coverage as always from all three of you. And you cannot contain Wayne Cook. It's like when he's firing on the golf course and all of a sudden he's just making, these long 30-foot putts. Wayne is just hitting 30-foot putt after 30-foot putt right now.
Yeah, Wayne Cook living his best life right now. Let's shift gears here. You don't see many 3-touchdown favorites lose outright. And I'm not even talking about my Florida State team. I'm looking at you, Memphis. I'm talking about Memphis. The Tigers lost to UAB last week, and kind of a head scratcher there. Now things getting very interesting in the American. Really, all of the G5 of that playoff bid there. Quarterback issues for the Tigers as well. Brendan Lewis hurt in the third quarter last week. They're saying he's day-to-day. We might see the freshman A.J. Hill, might see Arrington Maiden, according to their coach, Silverfield. Now, on the other side, Byron Brown and USF, they've been rolling as of late. The big win at North Texas a couple weeks back. They handled business very convincingly against FAU last week. So they've got momentum on their side. But both of these teams, Phil, 6-1 straight up and against the spread. Memphis has won the last 4 in this series. It's a bounce back spot for Memphis, but how worried are you about the quarterback situation there?
Yeah, it does concern me. Brendan Lewis was the QB. A.J. Hill looked decent, almost led the comeback. Remember, they got that run by DeRochers down to for a touchdown, but then they rolled it at the 1. So his first goal at the 1, they couldn't punch it in, or they could have tied the game and escaped. And it's something to think about, that head coaching bounce thing, because it really has come to form this year. When they fire the head coach, then next week that team usually rallies around and plays a great game. And that's what happened with UAB. They get rid of their head coach and all of a sudden played the best game of the season. And we've seen that a lot this year. And that tells you there's been a lot of head coaching firings as well. Now, Memphis was a perfect 6-0 straight up in ATS. And I really like Memphis in this game a lot to win the game. But now with Lewis questionable and the way South Florida's been playing, you look at the last 4 games, South Florida's just been buzzsawing teams. They're averaging 230 yards above what their opponents have had. They're plus 230 yards per game. So tough to go against this USF team. But Memphis has been a different team under Silverfield at home and away. At home, they're about a 90% win team. On the road, they're a 50-50 team. Last week's game was on the road at UAB. I'm still going to lean with Memphis plus the points, even with the questionable Brendan Lewis, but it wouldn't be one of my top plays of the week. But I do think Memphis can win this game outright.
All right, let's go to the SEC for the first time here, Phil. Number 8, Ole Miss at number 13, Oklahoma. Incredible game we've got coming up in Norman. Ole Miss coming off that barn burner last week in Athens when they lost to Georgia, again on the road. Meanwhile, Oklahoma, they got right post Red River. John Mateer looked a little better. They knocked off South Carolina. He continues to get healthier week after week, and that Oklahoma defense is still just, as good as ever under Brent Venables. Oklahoma's favored by 5.5 against the Rebels. What do you got here in this one in Norman?
Yeah, no, it is going to rain. It's going to possibly be windy. So that would have me slant towards the under a little bit in this one as well. Although I think the total's low. It's only about 44. But I like Oklahoma. Now, you look at the rest of the season schedule for these two teams. And, Ole Miss is playing South Carolina, Citadel, Florida, and at Mississippi State. Oklahoma's playing at Tennessee, at Alabama, Missouri, and LSU. So, Oklahoma, if they're going to have any shot at the playoff, they need to win this game because I don't think you get through that 4-game gauntlet undefeated. But better defense. I like our quarterback. I think when you look at Ole Miss, they have struggled in their 2 road games. Remember the Kentucky game, they only won by 7. And, of course, Georgia was a bad fourth quarter. Played a really good 3 quarters in that game. I think Oklahoma's got the edge on defense. Offensively, you got to give a slight edge to Mississippi. But I believe Mateer's going to get better each and every week. I like the home crowd playing with revenge. I'm going to go with Oklahoma minus the 5. 5 points here.
Phil, I'm glad you mentioned that about the weather and about the total there, because Oklahoma, perfect under team so far this year. 7-0 to the under. I just felt like Ole Miss could maybe score a little bit. I saw this game probably getting into the 60s, but with weather being a factor and that Oklahoma defense,
60s.
maybe it's not the play.
Okay.
I also think we're just kind of waiting on Mateer to have that. They haven't looked as clean on offense as I thought they would have. And honestly, I think Mateer is the guy we think he is. I think we're just waiting on that performance for him to really break through this year.
Okay.
Let's jump over to the ACC, where Georgia Tech is laying too many points at home. I can't do it. I just can't do it. This is one of my first picks of the day. I love the Jackets. I love Brent. I think Brent Key's great. I don't think they're looking ahead. I just think this is too many points. I'm seeing 17.5, around 18 all week so far. Even with all the issues with Syracuse, I can't take Tech here. Even with Ricky Collins completing less than 50% of his passes last week, he got benched last week. I just can't do it. Even though they only had 212 yards of total offense. Maybe I'm actually talking myself into Georgia Tech right now. But my first instinct here is this is too many points. And I like Syracuse in this one as a road dog. I'm not calling on them to win the game, but maybe to just keep it inside that spread, Phil.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you 100% on that, Trip. I think if you follow Brent Key, he is a coach that's just amazing as an underdog. I brought it out last week when they played Duke. I said, if you make Brent Key's team an underdog, they will not only cover the spread, they will win the game outright, as they've done against all the ACC-ranked teams. But make them a big favorite, and this team struggles. I mean, you go back to the Wake Forest game, they barely won by 1, and fortunate to win by 1. Temple, they give up the backdoor touchdown. And meanwhile, Syracuse, while they lost to Pitt last week, 30-13, couple of plays. You look at just before the half, Syracuse punts, and Pitt returns the punt 66 yards for a touchdown with 2 seconds left in the half. Now, they kicked the ball out of bounds or grounded or something. It would have been a 10-7 game at the half. Instead, that turned into 17-7. Then at 23-13, I don't believe Pitt was even covering at that point. They got a touchdown with 1:57 left for a front door cover. So Syracuse is playing scrappy. There is a little something between the two teams. If you remember last year, Georgia Tech was off the Ireland trip. They were favored in the Dome, so they are playing with revenge here. But Brown didn't like the way that Brent Key was talking about it was going to be one at the line of scrimmage by the more physical team. He had Syracuse all fired up, and they came out and played physically with Georgia Tech and ended up winning that game at home. So the revenge factor's on Georgia Tech's side, but I agree with you 100%. Brent Key, great dog, not so great big favorite. I'm going to side with Syracuse plus the points.
All right, Phil, let's keep it in the ACC. Another really interesting line here when I saw this. We've got Virginia on the road in Chapel Hill to take on UNC, and Virginia only favored by 10.5 here. We talked about UNC last week. I was kind of interested in the Tar Heels on the road at Cal, and you told me, like, we just need to see it. UNC was better last week. Way more competent. Could have won the game, too, on the road at Cal there. And Virginia coming off kind of another puzzling. I liked Virginia last week. I thought they would cover the big spread against Washington State, even after Washington State impressed us with their performance against Ole Miss, back-to-back road trips. Virginia was just, fighting for their life there coming down the stretch there against the Cougs. Very interesting line here in Chapel Hill with Virginia favored by 10.5. Do you have a side on this one?
I do. I have a clear side. I think the buy sign went on North Carolina last week. I was waiting for it. I think it went on. And you go back and look at that Cal game. I mean, they fumbled on the first play of the game, basically handed Cal 7 points. So they were in a 7-0 hole early. And at the end of the game, down 21-18, they won the game. He throws a pass, tight end catches it over the middle towards the end zone. Right as it gets the end zone, fumble into the end zone, touchback. So North Carolina basically won that game last week, 25-21, despite putting themselves in the 7-0 hole early. I liked the fight I saw. And, with Bill Belichick, you had to feel it would just be a matter of time till they started to improve. And I saw the buy sign last week. Meanwhile, Virginia is in rare territory. And we see this when the rankings come out, the playoff rankings sometimes. People are like, can we do this? Can we do this? I think Virginia's thinking, can we get to the ACC title game? And look at their offense last 2 weeks. They only had 237 yards against Louisville and then just 301 last week. And you mentioned they were fortunate to come out of there with a win. They were trailing Washington State late, tied it, and then got that safety for a touchdown because of a fair catch on the kickoff by the player over here, spotted the ball at the 1. They were able to get the safety. So I think Virginia's playing tight. North Carolina's playing loose. Buy side is on. 10.5-point dog. And in the last 6 meetings between these two, the underdog is covered 5, but won 4 of them outright. I'm going with North Carolina plus the big points here.
Strong play. Strong play.
The buy sign is on for UNC. Love it. Let's go. All right, back to the Big Ten. We got Rutgers at Purdue. Scarlet Knights favored by 1.5. Phil, I'm not interested in who wins this game at all. I'm just not. I'm fascinated by the total, 58.5. Here's why. Rutgers is one of 3 teams in the country that are 6-1 going over their total this season. Now, Purdue's 2-5, but you look at recency for Rutgers, they've not scored more than 28 against Big Ten foes this year. Do we have enough here to call for a Big Ten over in West Lafayette?
Yeah, I think we do. And, when you look at Rutgers, their problem this year has been on the defensive side of the ball. They're allowing opponents 87 yards per game, 97 yards per game above their season average when they play. And teams are just lighting them up defensively. And Purdue, now Ryan Brown got injured last week. So they went with Malachi Singleton. If you remember Malachi Singleton from Arkansas, he led Arkansas to a big win there for SC. He's a VHT quarterback, which means he was very highly touted coming out of high school, dangerous runner and passer. And I think Singleton or Brown will be able to run this offense against that Rutgers defense. And offensively, I like this Rutgers offense. Now, keep in mind, they just played Oregon's defense. They played a really good Washington defense on the road. And they played a Minnesota team that has a really good defense, maybe not an impressive offense. And they played an Iowa defense. Well, now they're taking on Purdue's defense, which is nowhere in those teams' categories. So I think you're going to see Rutgers put points on the board. You're going to see Purdue put points on the board. I like the over in this game. That's my favorite play. And so to me, it's going to be a tight game, a coin flip game. Last team with the ball wins it, but I'm going to go with the over.
I'm going to give everybody a little peek behind the curtains here. David Kahn texted me about 2 hours ago. He's like, "Hey, Drew, why you got Purdue and Rutgers on the dock this week?" He didn't want to talk about it. Phil, I didn't
say I didn't want to talk about it. Hang on.
I tried to explain to this guy. I am also on the over, and apparently the chat is on the over too. I'm starting to get a little nervous about the over if everybody agrees on the over. But the reason I like this game, if they're playing on a football field inside a stadium and they got a scoreboard in there, if they're keeping scores, they normally do. That means you can bet on it. And that's why I love this game.
Jesus.
I love all these games, but I think Purdue is much improved, but Rutgers, not the same defensive team that we've been talking about. They're just not the same defensive team, but they've got a good quarterback. So I like the points there too. I think we get into the 60s there pretty easily. Here's another game.
All I said, by the way, but you can't just slander me and not let me defend myself. Jesus. All I said was that these are two bad teams, and this is going to be a bad game. That's all I said. I like the over too. That's all I said was these are bad teams, and I don't necessarily like talking about bad teams, but it's fine. Go on.
Very true. Very true. Even though I do think Purdue is much improved. All right, let's go to the Big 12. Sunflower Showdown at noon Saturday in Lawrence. Kansas State has won, I think, the last 3,000 times they've played, going all the way back to the 1500s. They just don't lose this game ever. But this is the rare occasion where the Jayhawks are the favorite. I'm seeing 2.5 right now. Jalen Daniels running a very balanced offense for Kansas. I think actually like the over here, it's 56.5, but we're seeing the Daniels from a couple years back where he was so dynamic. He kind of struggled last year. And when Kansas, their defense, when they played good competition, they've been giving it up. They allowed 42 to Mizzou, 37 to Cincy, 42 to Texas Tech. And K-State, off their best game of the season where they knocked off TCU, maybe they've found a little something off offensively as well. Avery Johnson was really good last time out. I see points here, Phil. What do you like in this one?
Yeah, I think there will be points. I'm going to lean with Kansas in this one for a couple of reasons. Now, first of all, let me say this about K-State. Those teams that come off, and you'll remember this with Florida State from last year, the teams that come off Ireland generally struggle. And K-State did just that. They opened up the season 1-3, 0-4 against the spread. Then they had a bye week. Then they blasted UCF. And really, they could have beaten Baylor. They kick a field goal to go ahead. Baylor kicks a field goal. Had Baylor missed that field goal, they would have won. Kansas State comes back down. They kick a field goal and miss it. So they were within a field goal, one way or the other, of beating Baylor in that game. And then last week, or in their last game, I should say, they beat TCU. So I think K-State's been a lot better since the bye. And they still are a legitimate team in the Big 12. Kansas, I love their new home stadium, though. Jalen Daniels, as you mentioned, how about an 18-2 ratio? That's drastic improvement over last year. I think in the big year that he had an 18-4 ratio. So now it's 18-2. He's doing even better than that. So they have the explosive offense. And I'll go back to last year's game. I like Kansas State a lot in that game, but Kansas just basically outplayed them the whole game. Kansas came this close to finally ending that 16-game streak. Not quite as long as you thought, Trip, but I do like the amplification on that. Anyway, they came this close to beating them. And 2 years ago, Kansas had a third-string quarterback. And I'm like, I love Kansas State. And they made it this close again. This should be the year they break through, being at home in front of that home stadium. I'm going to lean with Kansas in this one, but K-State's a dangerous team.
All right, back to the Big Ten as we wind down this noon slate, a very heavy noon slate on the Week 9 card. A lot of good games here, though, that we've talked about. Northwestern at Nebraska. The winner becomes bowl eligible. And who would have thought we'd be saying that about Northwestern at the start of the year, Phil?
Right.
They've won 4 straight, including at Penn State, that kicked James Franklin out of a job. Meanwhile, Nebraska got quieted at Minnesota last Friday night. They're back at home, though, and they're laying 8.5. What's the play here?
Yeah, I like Nebraska to win the game. I think they're a better team. They're at home, and they're off a bad situation. But we've seen teams recover from these losses on the road. Remember, Illinois got smacked by Indiana, then came home and beat USC. You look at Michigan, got beat on the road badly, then came home and beat Washington last week. So I think we'll see Nebraska rebound. I do like the way Emmett Johnson's running the football. They don't have overall great rushing stats, but Emmett Johnson's good for 100 yards anytime he steps on the field. Key's going to be their offensive line. Last week they gave up 9 sacks to Minnesota, and that really hurt them with Dylan Raiola. But that was on the road. It's a lot easier for an offensive line to play at home because you don't have the crowd noise you're dealing with. And Northwestern's not a sack-heavy team. They only have 11 sacks this year. Now, Northwestern's strength is running the football. They're averaging in Big Ten play close to 200 yards per game. They almost ran for 200 yards on Oregon. So I like the way that Kamalei and Hyman are running the football. Preston Stone, though, if you watch last week's game against Purdue, threw about 3 passes that should have been intercepted, and they weren't. So remember, he had that game against Tulane in the opener where he had 4 interceptions. He's now taking on the Nebraska pass defense. It's one of the best in the country. So I'm going to say Preston Stone interceptions are going to be the key to this one here. Plus, Nebraska's a pretty good team. So I like the Huskers to win this one, probably by about 7, and that's about where the line is. So I'm not going to pick this game. I'll see if one of you guys want to pick this game.
Trip, do you have a thought here? I have a thought. It's kind of against what Phil just said, though. So I'm curious what your thought is.
My lean was with the Huskers. I just think, bounce back spot. Minnesota's just kind of had their number too, but I kind of like the Huskers in a bounce back spot here.
I'm leaning Northwestern plus 8.5. Actually, that is what Phil said. Phil said Nebraska by about 7. So I have the line at 8.5. So Northwestern by 8.5 would be my lean here. Not a top play on the board though at all.
No bet coming on this one this week.
No,
okay.
But Northwestern's 5-2 against the spread, so that does make me feel a little better about taking them to cover the points.
Man, I had to spend all that money on my Tulane hoodie. I had to get the small coffee today instead. All right, kind of a little bit of a weird line in Winston-Salem this week. Phil, SMU only a 2.5, 3-point favorite at Wake Forest. SMU off the big win over Clemson. And we talked about this before the show. No Klubnik, but the backup played well for Clemson. But Ponies back to the East Coast again, second time in 2 weeks to take on Wake Forest. They're still perfect in league play. It's them, Georgia Tech, and Virginia as the only unbeatens in the ACC. Wake Forest, however, has found new life under Jake Dickert, bringing so much energy to the program. He's already exceeded expectations at 4-2 this year, straight up and against the spread. If they lose every game from here, I still think he did a good job. But I have a tough time going against Kevin Jennings in this spot. He's been so good, leads the ACC, 17 touchdown passes. And even though he's been more of a passer this year, every time I see him on TV, he is limping around. It does concern me a little bit that maybe somebody knows something about his health that we don't. But still, I'm not sure I understand the line here that much, but I would still have to leave. If Jennings is playing and everything's okay with him, I would have a tough time not going with SMU. They are in a sandwich spot, by the way. They're off a big win, and Miami's coming to Dallas.
Yeah, I think much like the Virginia Tech Cal game, the line is influenced by the situation here. Wake Forest being off a bye, SMU coming off of Clemson, which they traveled across the country, traveling across the country again, and a huge game against Miami on deck. So the situation greatly favors Wake. But I think much like with North Carolina, the bye sign went on for SMU. Now, SMU the last couple of years has been a slow starting team. You go back to last year, they had a really slow start to the season. But then the TCU game kicked them into gear, and all of a sudden they became a spread darling. Kevin Jennings, by the way, got injured in the first quarter last week against Clemson and did hobble around the rest of the game. I expect him to be fine for this one, but maybe not 100%, and I think the running will be limited due to that factor. But I do like the way he's throwing the football, and I think SMU is a really good team. And when you look at Wake, yes, they almost upset Georgia Tech, then went into Virginia Tech, got the win, and beat an Oregon State team bad enough so that they fired their coach. But I still think that the talent-wise is clearly on SMU's side. They basically just need to win the game at -3. The spread's very cheap here. So I like SMU minus the points over Wake despite the situation. But I think we're going to see SMU win by a touchdown or more here.
All right, back to the SEC we go. Auburn at Arkansas, 12:45 kick in Fayetteville. Two teams still looking for their first SEC win. Auburn's played 4 straight games within 10 points, had their hearts broken last week against Missouri. Meanwhile, Arkansas has lost 2 games by a field goal, but they continue to hit the over. It's Auburn by 2.5 on the road. The total, though, 56.5. And we got an Arkansas team who we've already mentioned, pure over team. They're 5-2 against it this year. We hitting it again, Phil? Over?
Yeah, there's only one way to bet when you come to Arkansas. Sorry about that, Trip. And that would be the over. They're over in their games. But I also like Arkansas in this one. Remember we talked about Auburn and Missouri last week, and I said Auburn's season could go one of 2 ways. I mean, if they beat Missouri, you look at the rest of their schedule, Arkansas, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Mercer. they could be a 3-loss team heading into Alabama or for a home game against Alabama, and all of a sudden their season's great. But they lost that game, and they blew a 7-point lead in the fourth quarter, and Missouri won it in overtime. Now you're off that big game, overtime loss, and having to travel on the road. And I think Bobby Petrino's got this Arkansas offense humming. And really it happened, I'm going to say game 5 last year for Taylon Green. He had a negative ratio prior to that, and then all of a sudden Taylon Green was dynamic down the stretch. This year he's got 17 touchdown passes, only 3 interceptions. This offense can even go against a Texas A&M defense or a Tennessee defense or a Notre Dame defense and put points up. They will put their points on the board. Now, their defense is a major concern, but, Auburn's offense has been inconsistent. There's talk Jackson Arnold may even lose his job this week, so we'll have to see how that plays out. I just like the whole vibe that's going on here at Arkansas. I think they can have a nice finish to the season, and this game could kick it off. So I'm going to go with Arkansas at home to pull the upset here.
Yeah, not taking the under this week. Not falling into that trap again. I'm silent on that game. All right, let's keep it in the SEC. Number 4, Alabama, an 11.5-point favorite on the road at South Carolina this week. And I don't have a whole lot of analysis here. Bama hasn't lost a game straight up or against the spread since Florida State. Well, depending on the number you had in the Missouri game. That could have been a push, could have been a loss, win, whatever. But quarterback for Bama, Ty Simpson, they're rolling. South Carolina can't figure it out on offense. Any reason to fade Bama here, Phil? Because I see a streak, and I'm just going to keep playing it.
Well, if you're a Bama backer, here's your main concern. DeBoer, tremendous against ranked teams. He's got one of the best records in college football. Put Alabama against a ranked team, they're going to win the game and cover. Non-ranked teams, the last 3 times they have traveled on the road and faced a non-ranked team, they've lost straight up. And most of them is a double-digit favorite. So that'd be a concern for me. But it's also got to be on the radar of Alabama. They've got to understand you got to come to play in these type of games and can't have that type of situation happen. Remember, they lost at Oklahoma last year when Oklahoma was dredging through the season. They lost at Vanderbilt last year, which really started the Pavia thing. So it has been a problem for them when they're taking on unranked teams like South Carolina. But Alabama is one of the best teams in the country. And if you follow South Carolina, they have Lenora Sellers on offense, but really running backs, questionable. Receiving core, questionable. Offensive line, they make Lenora Sellers run for his life at times. And defensively, last year's South Carolina team was built around that defensive front seven. It was one of the best defensive front sevens in college football. That's why they got to where they did last year. The majority of those guys are gone. Now, they're still playing good D, just not dominating like last year. So I think the total factor here is Alabama will be on guard for this with that fact that they've been dropping games like this. And I got to side with Alabama minus the points.
All right. Another SEC game and the biggest game of the weekend, in my opinion. I'm excited for this one as all get out. Number 15, Missouri at number 10, Vanderbilt. College game day in Nashville for the first time in 17 years. Vanderbilt coming off that emotional win over LSU. And boy, Phil, I was so proud of the Doors fans for not rushing the field. They acted like they have been there before. Yeah. Love it. And they didn't get the university fined. Good for them. Now, they're facing a very tough defense in Missouri who puts a lot of pressure on the quarterback, but the Tigers have struggled with mobile guys in the past, and we know Diego Pavia loves to get it churning with the legs. It's Vandy by 2 and a hook at home. What's the play?
Can't go against Diego Pavia, can you? I mean, this guy's remarkable. And, it goes back to the conversation I had with Coach Lee post-spring. He was a confident coach, not confident like, I think we're going to be able to make a bowl game again this year. No, not that kind of confidence at all. The confidence of, I think we can contend in the SEC. And they really showed me something. First of all, in the way they played Alabama, they played them extremely tough on the road. And then the way they beat LSU last week. Now, Missouri had a great schedule early on. Their first 6 games are at home, 5 of them very winnable games. And they took advantage. They dominated weak opponents. But then when the schedule gets tougher, all of a sudden it's got tougher for them. They were very fortunate to win at Auburn last week. Vanderbilt's a better team than Auburn. And, last week I couldn't really wrap my head around the fact that Vanderbilt was favored over LSU. And yet they didn't dominate the game, but they did win by 7 and deserved to win the game. Nothing fluky about it. They had a 72-yard edge. I'd like Vanderbilt, especially you're not even laying 3 points here. And the good thing is Vanderbilt, every time they've played an SEC team through the last couple of years, has always been at a fan deficit. The opposing fans outnumber them. I think they may have a crowd edge here against Missouri, and that's exciting. And as you touched on, David, great point. I thought the exact same thing when the game is over. I love the fact they did not charge the field. Hey, it's just a win. We got some big games coming up. So I like Vandy minus the points.
Clark Lee really turned things around there at Vandy. Eli Drinkwitz, pretty good coach himself. I bet their agents have been pretty busy the last couple of weeks.
Clark Lee's not going anywhere. Vanderbilt's his school.
Yep.
Just saying.
Agreed. I agree with Phil on that.
I don't know what programs might be calling him, but
every program's calling him. He's not going anywhere.
Probably pretty busy on that phone. Let's jump to the Big 12. BYU got it done at home in the Holy War last week. They're on the road at Iowa State on Saturday. Cyclones a field goal favorite at home. I can't get BYU right. The only time I bet the Cougars, they left the back door open against West Virginia a few weeks back, and I've tried to pick them off a couple of times in the last 2 weeks. I loved Arizona. BYU found a way to win in overtime, and then a couple of weeks back, they got me as well. They just keep escaping my little traps here. Iowa State is off a bye, and back-to-back losses on the road. So they're glad to be back in Jack Trice Stadium here, Phil. What do you like in this one?
Well, I can guarantee you this would not be one of my top picks of the week because I'm sick going against BYU. I mean, 2 weeks ago, I had Arizona, and Arizona's up by 10 in the fourth quarter with 5 minutes to go, and BYU's got a 4th and long. All they have to do is stop them on the 4th and long. Arizona wins by 10, and BYU's done. Guess what? The end of the game in overtime, BYU wins. Last week, Utah had a 102-yard edge in the game over BYU. But Whittingham was so confident in his offensive line and his team that 3 times they got deep in BYU territory, and they went for it on 4th down. Unfortunately, they got stopped on downs all 3 times, end up losing the game by 3. So this is a BYU team that's sort of doing it with smoke and mirrors, but they are 7-0. Satake is a phenomenal head coach. I like the way that Bear Bachmeier's running the offense. Defensively, they're holding opponents to 75 yards below their season average. It is a good BYU team, much better than I thought they would be this year, and they're playing great. So it's tough to go against BYU. However, the situation really favors Iowa State here in the fact that they're at home. And last year, as you recall, Iowa State had a 2-game losing streak at one point. And when I talked to Coach Campbell post-spring, we're going over the team from last year, he had said that, boy, we were all banged up last year. And then there was like 6 defensive starters that were out at one point, like against Texas Tech and Kansas when they had those losses. And that happened against Cincinnati. They were down 6 defensive starters, including their top 2 DBs. Well, now they're fresh off a bye, should get some of those players back. And Campbell made the adjustments down the stretch last year. After that Kansas loss, they won their last 3 and got to the Big 12 title game. I would expect him to make the adjustments. And when I talked to him about the secondary, he had said in the spring he liked the depth. So I think he's going to develop some guys to overcome those 2 guys. They're at home, must-win situation. BYU's coming off the Holy War win, and now they're traveling on the road. I'm going to go with Iowa State. They're laying less than a field goal to come out of here with the win. But like I said, you go broke betting against BYU this year.
He certainly would.
Very true.
Yeah. All right. Back to the Big Ten as we remain in the 3:30 window. Number 23, Illinois at Washington. Winner of this one is bowl eligible, but that spread keeps dipping for Washington, Phil. It's down to 3.5.
Wow.
We know, though, 3.5. Yeah. We know that the Huskies are a much better team at home than they are on the road. Both these teams are looking to get off the mat after losses. The Illini, though, coming off a bye. Where do we go here?
Yeah, I'm going to lean with Illinois plus the points, even though the spread keeps coming down on the game. At least it hasn't crossed that 3 threshold. I think if it crossed 3, it get a little dangerous. But I think they are a complete team. Their offensive line's been playing much, much better ever since that blowout loss to Indiana. The O-line has looked good. And remember, against Ohio State, they actually had a 23-yard edge in that game. So the defense is playing decent. I like the way Altmaier's throwing the football. When you look at Washington, though, it's tough to go against this team at home. They've been unbeatable at home. Only Ohio State is their only home loss since Fish has taken over there. Jonah Coleman at running back, Damon Williams at wide receiver, Damon Williams at quarterback, Boston at wide receiver. This is a dangerous Washington team at home, but I'm going to lean with Illinois plus getting over a field goal.
Okay, that's interesting because and David mentioned it. Washington, very good team at home.
Very good at home.
When I break this stuff down each week, I look and I see games. I bet Phil's going to like. I had you on Washington this week, Phil, so I just lost a bet with myself. But that was a good breakdown of that game. Definitely looking forward to that one. We'll keep it in the Big Ten here. This is another game that I really like. Minnesota at Iowa. Pair of 5-2 teams in the Big Ten. Gophers playing good football the last couple of weeks. They beat Nebraska last week. They seem to have their number. But this series has not been very good for them versus Iowa, especially as of late. Hawkeyes have won 9 out of the last 10. And ATS, they're 7-2-1 in that stretch. I'm seeing the line is 8.5, and I like Iowa at home. But, the unders also always on my mind when I see Iowa. Phil, the total's 39.5 here. And you could take every game these two have played in the last 10 years. I don't think they've scored 39 points. I'm joking because the game actually went over last year. Mm-hmm. But I just think Iowa, I trust the Hawkeyes at home. I think they're a very good defensive team. I think efficiency rating, they're in the top 15 in the country. And Minnesota's offense, as far as efficiency, rated in the 60s, close to 70. I just think we're talking about teams that are on two different levels. And even though it's a big spread, and Minnesota's defense has played way better here as of late, I still favor the Hawkeyes laying 8.5.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you, Tripp. In fact, if the spread was 6.5, under 7, I would have Iowa as one of my top plays of the week probably, because I do think they are the better team. They're at home. We saw a couple of weeks ago, Minnesota played Purdue, got outgained by like 200 yards, close to 200 yards in that game. Now, last week, I will say this. Minnesota's defensive line was dominant against Nebraska, 9 sacks, but that was at home. Now they got to go on the road and do it. They also got Darius Taylor back, which is a big piece to that offense. If you follow Minnesota, you know that P.J. Fleck likes to run the football. He's at his best when he's got the run game going. They went through 3 straight games where they couldn't even get to 100 yards as a team. But Darius Taylor coming back last week was big. But it is Drake Lindsay going on the road against Iowa. And Iowa's got, Phil Parker is one of, if not the best defense coordinator in the country. The stuff he does with the talent he's got is amazing. Last year, I think Phil Parker had, for him, an average defense, which was an above average defense, but not an elite defense. He's back up to that elite defense level. And Mark Gronowski's getting better and better by the week. I also like the way that Moulton's running the football. So the offensive line's playing extremely well. In fact, the offensive line might just be a Joe Moore Award candidate as the season rolls on. I got to like Iowa here. And they've been a spread machine this year, aren't they? David, you're got the numbers on all the spread things. What's Iowa's spread record this year?
Oh, man, I need to pull that one up. But I will say, death taxes and Iowa unders. The chat is telling me that Tripp dreams of Iowa unders. Are you having dreams about Iowa unders, Tripp? Is that true?
I was 4-2-1 ATS this year. And yes, I do dream about Iowa unders. There's probably nothing that's treated me better since I've started following college football than the Iowa under. So I love a good Iowa under, and I don't mind a defensive football game. I don't mind a low scoring football game. I think it's still good football, even if it's, 17-10 or whatever. I don't mind a couple of good.
I love defensive football games.
There you go. All right, let's talk about a little bit of an off the radar game. Well, it's not so much off the radar anymore, because if you guys have been paying attention to Washington State, this team had Ole Miss on the ropes. They had Virginia on the ropes. Both of those games on the road as well. For a team that lost, and hear me out here, they lost everything. And I mean everything. John Mateer, one of the, maybe the top quarterback on the portal market, he's gone. Their head coach, Jake Dickert, is gone and doing well here in the ACC at Wake Forest. Players left to follow Dickert. That's why I took Washington State under, I think it was 5.5 wins to start the season, because the team had just been ravaged. But a few weeks back, I thought we were starting to really see the wheels come off. They got blown out at North Texas. And then what was the game after North Texas? It was the Apple Cup. Yeah, the Apple Cup. They did not cover in the Apple Cup.
Down by 7 in the fourth quarter.
They were down by 7 in the fourth quarter. And I think I told you guys on this show the next week, the quarterback that they played, we had expected to see like 3 quarterbacks in that game. They started Eckhouse. They kept it with Eckhouse. And I don't know that Eckhouse is like a pro quarterback or anything, but he's just a good decision maker. And they've been playing much better ball. They're favored this week, though. They're laying, it's only 1.5, and they've playing a pretty good Toledo team on the Palouse. Do you have a side in this one, Phil?
Yeah, I think this one's tough for me for this reason. My computer loves Toledo. I mean, Toledo is plus 231 yards per game this year. Washington State is minus 27 yards per game. So, Toledo statistically so much better than Washington State. But I've only seen one bad game for Washington State all year, and that was the North Texas game. Other than that, they played well. Even San Diego State's got a really good team in the Mountain West. They beat them 36-13. But I think Toledo can play with anybody in the country. They gave Kentucky a really good game. Last year, they beat Mississippi State on the road. Their problem is when they're a big favorite sometimes, they lose outright. Or there are 2 losses in MAC play this year. Western Michigan, they led 13-0. Bowling Green, they absolutely obliterated in the first half. They had like a 280 to 20-yard edge with a minute to go in the half and somehow lost that game. That's Toledo's problem. But now I think you got Toledo in the situation they'll be fired up as the underdog. They're traveling all the way across the country. I have a tough time picking this. My computer says Toledo. The situation says Washington State. One of you guys got a strong play here?
You take this trip.
I don't have a strong play. And trust me, when I get on one of these things where I'm like, I'm going to bet against this team, I do it. And then sometimes it just doesn't work out. Washington State's been that team. I took Ole Miss to cover against Washington State. And that was like a 30-point line. And there we are in the fourth quarter thinking, oh my God, Ole Miss is going to lose their first game of the season. But
and even last week, it was back-to-back trips across the country. You had to favor Virginia, right?
Absolutely.
They almost beat Virginia on the road. So they're playing really good ball, just not statistically, they're not dominant.
Yep. Very true.
All right, back to the ACC we go. NC State at Pitt, Phil, is where we are next. Pitt has won 3 straight. They've really righted their ship since the change at quarterback to Mason Heinschel, though he had his worst game at Syracuse last weekend. NC State, meanwhile, headed in the opposite direction. They've lost 3 of 4. Coming off a bye, though, so maybe some extra rest can help them here. They're getting 5.5 on the road in Pittsburgh. What's the rationale here?
Yeah, I think Pitt's a better team. Pitt's actually close to being 7-0 right now. Remember, West Virginia, they led by 10 with 5 minutes to go in the game. Louisville, they led by 17 and 10 and ended up losing that game. So they're pretty close to being a 7-0 team. They're a little banged up at linebacker, which I'm concerned with, but I think Narduzzi will be okay at that situation. Desmond Reed's back at running back, which is huge because Reed got banged up against West Virginia, didn't play against Louisville. I think you're going to see Reed really emerge this week. He wasn't 100% last week against Syracuse, and the game wasn't as dominant as 30-13, as I pointed out earlier. But I do think Pitt at home will play a really good game. And NC State I haven't been blown away in any of their games this year. Even when they opened the season 3-0, they were basically 3 plays away from being 0-3. So I'm going to lean with Pitt minus the 5.5.
Yeah, NC State just hasn't shown much of anything, and like you said, Pitt just seems like the better team. We go to the Big 12 now. 4:00 game. Baylor at number 21 Cincinnati. 3.5 is the line in favor of Cincinnati. The total 66.5. I have one word to say about this game, Phil. Over. Baylor and Cincinnati both are 5-2 going over the total this season. You've got 2 remarkable quarterbacks in Sawyer Robertson and Brendan Sorsby. Both defenses allowing more than 380 yards per game. Baylor's allowing more than 31 per contest. I mean, just give it to me, right? Come on.
Yeah, it's the only way to go. The number's high, but you have 2 exceptional quarterbacks in Sorsby and Robertson. And then you look at the defenses. Baylor is allowing foes 77 yards per game above their average. So if you come in averaging 400 yards per game, and Cincinnati's averaging 440 yards per game, that means Baylor's going to give them 520. Meanwhile, Cincinnati's defense giving opponents 56 yards per game above their average. Baylor's averaging 486 yards per game. So that means they're going to get 540. Got each team over 500 yards, unless it's that game we had a couple weeks ago, Trip, where
Washington, yeah,
1,080 yards offense and didn't go over the total. This one will have the offense. Let's hope we get the points. It's tough for me to pick against either of these two. I think they're both play-on teams. So over's my play in this one.
Yeah, you got to like the over there. I mean, two great quarterbacks, Robertson and Sorsby, and it's kind of the streak play too. Baylor three overs in a row. You definitely have to think you're going to see some points in that one. We'll jump back to the SEC. 4:15 kick for Texas at Mississippi State. Another just really interesting matchup here and an interesting line. Longhorns have just been bankrupting people this season. 2-5 against the spread. They beat Oklahoma by 17. They turn around. They need overtime to take care of Kentucky. They're back on the road for the second week in a row, and Mississippi State's been undervalued this season. They're now 6-1 ATS. They came back, covered late, had a chance to win against Florida in the Swamp last week. Not a pushover anymore are the Bulldogs. Outside of A&M, they've played their tougher competition very tight this season. I do worry about their offensive line and being a hold up against a very good Texas defense. I also worry about the Texas offensive line because they have just struggled all year long and they've really just haven't been able to get it going. How do you see this one playing out, Phil?
Yeah, tough for me to call because, you can make a case. The line's cheap enough to play Texas in this. And you could say, I believe Sarkisian's 1-6 or something like that off of the Oklahoma game. So coming off that, going on the road against Kentucky. But, I mean, Kentucky just dominated that game. They had a 26-9 first down edge. And as you mentioned, Mississippi State's been very scrappy all year. Almost beat Florida, if not for a late interception. Almost beat Tennessee, ended up losing in overtime. So very impressed with what Mississippi State's doing. I think line value says play Texas. I believe Texas was a massive favorite last year. Now they're only laying around a touchdown. But I'm going to lean with the home dog here.
All right, into the night slate we go. 7:00 kick in Miami Gardens, Coral Gables, whatever you want to call it. Number 9 Miami hosting the Stanford Cardinal, who beat Florida State last week. Just got to remind Tripp of that again. We're worried about you, buddy. All right, it's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. I'm also worried about Miami though, Phil, because that was a rough loss against Louisville last week, and now they got a really lofty spread to cover against the Cardinal. 29.5 is the spread. What do we do here?
Yeah, it wouldn't be even on my board as one of the games to play. I can make a case for Miami winning this one big, but Stanford's been so doggone scrappy. And I remember talking to the coaches this year at the spring, they all felt we're going to surprise a lot of people. We're better than we thought, or better than you think, let's say, because they thought they were pretty good. And they showed it against Florida State last week. And, they played smooth, pretty tough in that game, closer than the final score would indicate. And so I think they're a scrappy team, but Miami is the much better team. I'm letting this one slide. You guys pick it.
Oh man, Tripp, you got a thought here? It's I'll let you get in on this one since Stanford just beat on your Seminoles last week.
Tripp, are you there?
I'm here. I don't really. This isn't one that's gonna make my. It's not gonna make my card this week. As good as Stanford is, Stanford plays hard. Stanford is better than we expected. But here's my take on this situation. And I don't really have it because 30 is still a lot. I think Miami is still a top-notch team. In my opinion, I don't think Louisville's a bad team. I think they came in, punched Miami in the mouth right off the bat. If you saw after the first quarter in that Miami-Louisville game, Miami's defense did respond, and they played better from there on out. I still think they're stacked on the defensive line. I love their weapons, but they did have Carson Beck, who's looked like the Carson Beck from 2 years ago, like a first-round talent. He threw 4 picks. He had his worst game of the season. Now, a lot of people probably think, well, maybe that's the first crack in the foundation for Miami. I don't see it. I still have Miami is a very highly rated team on my board. I just don't think there's many teams in the country that are better than the Hurricanes. So as much as I like Miami here, I do think they're outclassing Stanford, but 30 is a lot to lay. And plus, if it gets out of hand early, you never know, a backdoor. This just isn't one of my top plays. But my take on the whole situation is I think Miami is still very, very good.
Oh, I think everybody thinks Miami's still very good. Then they do have a big game. They have to travel to SMU next week. So that's a massive game. A little bit of a sandwich situation.
Yeah, take this game and throw it in the garbage can. I'm running away from it.
I should have cut that one from the doc there. All right, in a week that does not have a lot of marquee matchups, we do have one down in Death Valley, 7:30 kick. Undefeated Texas A&M at LSU. The Aggies favored by 2.5 was the last I saw. A&M in a shootout last week. I tried to tell you guys there's going to be a lot of points in that game up there, Arkansas. But the Aggies have been the better team this year, but it's never easy to win at night down in Tiger Stadium. It's such a huge advantage. And I feel like I don't know if LSU's given up or not. I don't know if they're quitting on Brian Kelly or anything, but this is one last chance to kind of circle the wagons. And this is another team where the record, I still feel like LSU's pretty good. I still like their defense. And I think that even though this would probably be, people are going to see, LSU's at home and they're an underdog. Let's pound LSU. This might be a public bet. Public might be on LSU, but if I'm being honest, I would probably still lean LSU here.
Yeah, when I look at the game, I think when you look at LSU, you go back to the Florida game, they were out first down 23-10. You go back to the Mississippi game, they're outgained by 225 yards by Mississippi. Vanderbilt, they lose outright. South Carolina, they needed a late score to get the cover in that one. They really haven't been all that impressive. The Clemson game was the most impressive game of the year. And the problem is the offensive line. They have 4 new starters on the offensive line. They're not doing a good job running the football, only average 115 yards per game. And Nussmeier's been nowhere near the quarterback expected coming into the year. Defensively, they're good. I wouldn't put them up in the elite category, but they have a good defense. A&M still has a good defense, despite what happened last week. I am not down on A&M's defense whatsoever. And A&M's got an outstanding offensive line. That's a big plus. They've now running backs, they're a little depleted there, but they're very solid. They've got a bunch of BHTs. Marcel Reed's look great. I think A&M's a better team. But you touched on it, Trip. Death Valley at home at night, backs against the wall. There's a lot to think about here. I find it a tough time picking against A&M or against LSU in Death Valley.
It's a tough spot for sure.
It certainly is. All right, we stick in the 7:30 window. Boston College at number 19, Louisville is where we go next. We just talked about the Cardinals not too long ago. They come home. They get hapless Boston College, who's 1-6 overall, 0-4 in the ACC. Louisville, of course, coming off the dynamic win over Miami. Miller Moss, 3 scores. The defense was amazing. Is this just easy pickings for the Cardinals? I know it's a big spread at 25.5, but BC's looked lifeless this year, Phil.
Yeah, they've struggled. And the good thing for Louisville, I think, is that Isaac Brown finally looked like Isaac Brown last week. Remember, he was banged up, not as productive. I think that's a big plus for the offense. I still would like to see Miller Moss get a little bit more explosive. And Grayson James did give BC some life at quarterback. They benched Lonergan and put in James. And in the first half, they actually came back and led Connecticut last week with 20 points and 272 yards in the first half. So I can't imagine a Bill O'Brien team quitting. I would probably lean with the underdog here, but it's scary. And this could have been the buy sign for Louisville, especially if Isaac Brown turns into Isaac Brown again.
All right, coming down the stretch here as we wrap things up, just a couple games left. Michigan at Michigan State Saturday night, Maize and Blue laying a big 14.5. The Spartans have been heading in the wrong direction since conference play started. They've lost 4 straight by a combined 75. For me, Michigan's the play here. I know you can make the angle that it's a rivalry game, Michigan State at home, but I'd be laying my money on Underwood and that Michigan defense here.
Well, we all remember the last time Michigan State was at home in this rivalry game, don't we? What happened?
Michigan won 49-0.
Oh, 49-0. Okay, so Michigan's capable of handling the rivalry. To me, this is a line of scrimmage game. Michigan State in Big Ten play struggles to run the football, under 100 yards per game, 3 yards per carry. Michigan's defense stops the run. They allow just 2 point something per carry on the ground. Meanwhile, Michigan's at their best when they can run the football. Well, Michigan State's defense giving up 5.1 yards per carry in Big Ten play. By the way, they're also giving up 74% completions. Michigan runs the football. They win. So it's a line of scrimmage game. I like that for Michigan. And also, if you look at Michigan State a little bit closer, their scores are a bit deceiving. And this is going to open up some wounds for our listeners out there, as well as myself. They got a 75-yard touchdown pass against USC for the cover. They got a late touchdown against Nebraska and then didn't get the 2-point conversion. And last week, they kicked a doggone field goal with 33 seconds left to only lose by 25. So they've been your backdoor team this season. A lot of their scores are late in games when they're out of reach. I like Michigan to put a thumb down on their rival in this one. Agree with you there, Tripp.
You know, it's funny. You mentioned what happened 2 years ago. My mind immediately went to the Michigan State game where they had the block punt and they beat Michigan. How has that been like 4 years ago?
Yeah,
4 years ago now. That's crazy. Go ahead, Dave.
You know, Tripp, if you listen to College Sports Now on Wednesdays with Phil Steele, Wayne Cook, and Stephen Hartzell, you would have known that because they dropped that nugget on the show.
So didn't make it that far into the show.
just joshing you. All right, Phil, 3 games to go. Number 17 Tennessee at Kentucky is where we go next. 7:45 p.m. kick. Both teams coming off a loss. Kentucky, though, they had their chances against Texas too, but that SEC losing streak at home pushes to 9 games for the Wildcats. Meanwhile, the Vols just another victim on Alabama's seeming collision course to the SEC title game, it seems like. And Joey Aguilar, he got beat up too. The Vols really need this game to stay in the running for the SEC championship and the college football playoff for that matter. They're 5-2 right now, and they're favored by 7.5 at Kroger Field. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm only with Tennessee in this one. Tennessee's dominated when they travel here to Kentucky. I believe they covered the last 5 times they've came here. As you mentioned, David, Kentucky very impressive last week. 26-9 first downs, 395 to 179 yards in that game, and that was against Texas, but it was catching Texas off of Oklahoma. Cutter Boley has struggled at times this year, just has a 4-4 ratio, and Tennessee has owned this series. I'd like Tennessee to go on the road and get the win by more than the spread.
All right, 8 o'clock kick now in the Big 12, our penultimate game that we're going to talk about this week on what's been a loaded Phil Steele show. Appreciate everybody in the chat as well chiming in with their thoughts. Houston at number 24, Arizona State. I think this game is juicy. Arizona State favored by 6.5. The total's 46.5. Arizona State did take advantage of no Baron Morton last week for Texas Tech. They got the win. Meanwhile, Houston pulls another rabbit out of the hat. They knock off Arizona with the 41-yarder at the horn. Phil, the Sun Devils this week without Jordan Tyson, hamstring injury. Now, Arizona State's won 10 straight at home, but Sam Leavitt's without his best weapon at receiver. What's the play here?
Yeah, it's tough for me to call because it's at home at night in the desert. Arizona State has an excellent defense. In fact, they're holding opponents to 160 yards below their average this year, one of the tops in the country. Houston has an excellent defense. I probably trust Leavitt a little bit more on offense than I do with Weigman. Weigman is having a good year. I do like Dean Connors, a running back. I'm torn. I would have put Arizona State by about 7. That's around the spread. What do you guys got to pick on this game?
I do. I actually was going to suggest you a little 2-leg parlay, but you kind of talked me out of the back half of it already. I was going to say Houston plus the points and the over, but I'm thinking I might cut the over here and just go play Houston plus the points and run away because Houston's 5-2 against the spread and hitting the over, but they are 2 good defenses. I don't know. I'm feeling a little queasy about that one now.
Yeah, go with Houston on that then. Nice pick there, David.
All right.
Yeah, and get a good line too. See if you can get that 7.5.
Yes, very important. Trip.
Shop around, absolutely.
All right, last game I wanted to tee up for you, Phil. Utah looking to get back on track after losing at BYU. It's a big number here. I've seen 12.5. I've seen 13.5 that they're laying against Colorado. Colorado's not been good on the road this year. The only 2 road games so far, but they didn't cover in either. And now they're facing what has to be kind of an angry Utah team. I would roll with the Utes here. Do you have a play in this one?
Yeah, the biggest question mark, and the reason that the spread is under 14 points is Devin Dampier for Utah is may not play, and that would hurt them. He's a big part of their offense. But, Bird Ficklin is a similar type of athlete. And I think with that offensive line and that defense and off a loss, last time we saw them off a loss, they just blasted West Virginia on the road 48-14. And I think Whittingham still has a lot of faith in this team. And stranger things have happened. They could still get to that Big 12 title game. So I like Utah minus the points at home, even if Dampier doesn't play in this one.
Just a loaded week 9 slate. Thank you, Phil, for running through everything with us. We mentioned before, 2-1 or better for the last month on your top 3 plays. Let's hear them this week.
This week I'm going to go with, and I think you guys probably caught it by the way I talked about the game when we described it. I like North Carolina, plus the points over Virginia. I think it's the buy sign went on for the Tar Heels. And then, as you mentioned, Tripp, I like Michigan, minus the points over Michigan State. And then we're going to pull out a Stephen Hartzell play. We've done that a couple times here. And, Stephen always asked me for an off-the-board game, one that we didn't talk about. And I went with Miami of Ohio, minus 1.5 over Western Michigan. Now, if you know anything about Chuck Martin at Miami of Ohio, he doesn't care about the non-conference games. But put him in conference games, he's almost unbeatable. He's almost unbeatable at home in conference games. Western Michigan, I think, is 4-13 straight up on the road the last 3 years. Miami of Ohio, almost unbeatable at home when they play in a MAC game. Great home favorite. The two teams are close talent-wise, but Miami's only laying 1.5 here, which is doggone cheap. I'm taking Miami of Ohio minus 1.5. I think they're the better team at home. And forget what happened in the non-conference with Chuck Martin. It's what happens in conference play, and that's where Miami's at its best.
It's going to make my card, Phil. Whenever we do a show and you pull out a game we haven't talked about, I know that's a good pick. All right, David, you got anything you want to lay down this week?
I mean, listen, when you have a MAC game by 1.5, you got to hammer it. Ball State minus 1.5, easiest money in the world last week. Come on, everybody. Like, let's go. We love to see it.
Did I forget to mention that earlier in the show?
Yeah, that one hit too. I was 2-0 last week.
Nice job.
Tripp was shivering in his boots.
That dart hit bullseye.
It sure did. No, Phil, that's a great pick on Miami of Ohio. My top play is Houston plus 6.5. That's the one for me right there. Put that dart right in the bullseye. Give me Willie Fritz to go on the road into Tempe and walk out of there with his straight up cover. Maybe an outright dub.
Maybe so. Okay. All right.
Well, nice.
Good stuff, folks. Good stuff.
What about you, Tripp?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple things here. I like some points this week. I think in a week where, people were not as high on the slate, I think it's going to be an amazing – it happens every time. Oh, we don't have any big games this week. There's going to be some of the best games played of the whole season. Just watch and see. And I think I've got a couple of them on my radar. I think we'll see Memphis respond. And I'm not going to say I'm going to take the Tigers, but I think we see points there. It's like 62, low 60s there. I think we'll see points in Rutgers, Purdue. We talked about that one. Phil and David and the chat likes the over there. And I think we'll see some points in that Kansas State game as well.
Love all of that. Love all of that.
All right.
Also I love home field Tripp too, by the way. I know you do too. Homefieldapparel.com, folks, is the place to go. You need to go get yourself right with some home field gear. Tripp is about to get himself right with some Tulane Green Wave home field gear, courtesy of that bet he lost to me last week.
Keeping them in business.
You are doing a little bit of the business. They are raking in the dough right now, and they're going to continue to rake in some more dough because Louisiana Tech gear just dropped at homefieldapparel.com. So shout out Kyle Schasberger, the Bulldogs. Louisiana Tech gear out as of this morning at 10 a.m. Eastern time. So if you're a Louisiana Tech fan, which Tripp and I and Phil, we're going to support Louisiana Tech because we love our man Kyle Schasberger. So go get yourself some gear, homefieldapparel.com. Use the code PHIL15 for 15% off your order and go support our sponsors at Home Field Apparel.
All right. Thank you, guys. It's been a great show. Thank everybody for listening, everybody for watching on YouTube. We'll be back next week, 11 a.m. Eastern time, right here on the Phil Steele Show.